Welcome, everyone, and welcome to Explore the Unsolved with Melissa, where we dig into some of the most perplexing true crime mysteries that refuse to give us answers. Today, we're diving into one of the most haunting mysteries from St. Louis, a story that's captivated and horrified and frustrated investigators and the public alike for over 40 years. This is the tragic story of the St. Louis Jane Doe.
Subscribe.
Our story begins on a cold February day in 1983 in an assuming vacant apartment building of 5635 Clemens Avenue in St. Louis, Missouri, where two men looking for parts looked inside the building and lit a cigarette. Inside, they saw the horrific body of the St. Louis Jane Doe. Inside, and he had notified the police. Inside the basement, police stumbled upon the lifeless body of the young girl, and at first thought she was a young woman, perhaps perhaps a woman of older age. But once they turned her around, they realized that this body was not that of an adult, but that of a child. And what they found was gruesome, almost beyond words. She had been decapitated, her hands bound tightly behind her back, and she was dressed only in a bloody yellow sweater. She was very young, estimated between just the ages of 8 to 12 years old. In absence of a name, the community has come to call her the St. Louis Jane Doe, or sometimes Precious Hope. Despite her tragic death, no one came forward to claim her. Her identity remains unknown to this day. From the start, the case was a nightmare for investigators who had no leads, who had no head to identify her, and no family stepping forward. Authorities were left even without the most basic of leads. Detectives searched through missing person reports from across the country, but none matched her description. They searched the area extensively, hoping to locate her head or additional clues that they could provide insight in her into her last moments, but nothing was found. They even placed ads in local magazines, but nothing, and newspapers, but nothing worked. They even turned to the public, releasing composite sketches and police information. Tips flooded in, but each one led to dead ends. Detectives at the Times were deeply affected by this case, dedicated countless hours to tracking down leads and consulting experts. In cases like this, the authorities often consider those with violent history against children. One such figure, who remains a top lead and a top suspect for investigators, came under scrutiny, was serial killer Vernon Brown, a convicted murderer and suspected serial killer. Brown was convicted of killing of two young girls and suspected of many others, and fit the profile in many ways. However, despite repeated interviews, he never confessed to the murder of the St. Louis Jane Doe before he was executed. In fact, it's been suggested by some investigators that Brown was in St. Louis around the time of her murder, but without confession or evidence linking him to the crime. This theory remains subjective at least. Another thing that rules Brown out is that investigators and people alike, call his style sloppy, often leaving behind weaknesses and evidence behind. And this crime was too sophisticated for someone like him to possibly be a part of, to do. Another notorious criminal was Tommy Lee Sells, known for his brutality and morality, was also considered. Sells was known to have committed violent crimes across the country, but investigators eventually ruled him out, after determining he was not likely in Missouri at the time. Fast forward and unfortunately, this case has another tragic ending. In a fit of desperation, the investigators at the time, in the 80s, resorted to sidekicks to look for clues to her. And one sidekick said she could help you with them if they mail in the rope and the sweater to her. And they did. But unfortunately, the two critical pieces of evidence, her sweater and the rope used to tie her wrist, were lost in the mail, are now considered lost. So, on top of not having much to go for identification, he also lost the two pieces of critical evidence they could use to identify this woman, making this case even more tragic. Fast forward to more recent years, in 2000 recent years, we find the forensic technology has become more advanced. In 2013, her remains were exhumed for mineral analysis by the Smithsonian Institute. But at first, they couldn't find the remains because everything was all together. But after going through the photos of the cemetery where she was buried, they were able to find her remains. This test aimed to prove insight to where she had lived based on mineral deposits in her bones, the water that she had drank in. Results suggest that Jane Doe may spend her early years in the Midwest or southern United States. And among other states, that includes Pennsylvania. The case was given new development. The St. Louis Police Department used these clues along with their DNA profile, was entered into FBI's coded system. Unfortunately, no matches have surfaced, but the detectives remain hopeful that as the database grows, there might be a match. So they have her DNA on file. The other hope could be they can use genetic genealogy to solve this case, connecting her DNA to that of a loved one. But let's look into what we do know. We now know this young girl, based on her body, on internal with the first examination, that she was well cared for in her life. She was well fed, treated very nicely, and had a good upbringing. Investigators believed that she was no more around 5'10" or shorter. Investigators believe she was of that of normal height and weighed approximately normal weight, indicates she came from a good background. But in the days leading up to her murder, she was not fed. So she was not fed before she died. And she was killed a couple of days prior to her body being discovered. Due to lack of blood at the crime scene, it was determined that she was killed elsewhere, and her body was then placed there. She had 2 coats of red nail polish on her nails, indicating maybe she probably did come from a loving family. She had a sister or older female relative, like her mother, who took care of her. Now, unfortunately, her head to this day has not been recovered. And I do believe there's a reason for that. We're going to go into my own theory of what I think happened to this girl. I believe this girl tragically died at the hands of someone who knew her. That could have been a family friend, a relative, maybe even her own father, a stepfather, a neighbor, a teacher. And they disposed of her head because they knew that once they took her, her family would report her missing. And then once they find her, they'll put 2 and 2 together and they'll be caught. In my opinion, they removed her head as a way to indefinitely delay the identity process. Because if she's missing and well known, then someone would recognize her. Even though she's not from the St. Louis area, the moment her face was out there on a missing person, on a poster, a magazine, a newspaper, someone would recognize her and identify her. So they'd remove her head in hopes that they wouldn't do that. The other thing was that even if they didn't, they knew that eventually dental records could be found. Maybe she did have dental records. Maybe she did come from good dental care, and her dentist still had her records. They could identify her through that process. So they removed her head in hopes to delay that process, which unfortunately they're still succeeded in. And I believe you only remove the head, the face, or fingernails in hopes to delay the identity process, but also to deny the obvious connection between you and the victim. That's why I believe she was killed by someone she knew. This girl, I truly do believe, has family that is still looking for her, that is still missing her. I truly do believe that this girl has someone looking out for her. Her mother, her father, her sibling, brother, sister, an aunt, uncle, a cousin. I think this girl has people in her life still looking for her. But I don't think they're from the St. Louis area. According to investigators, there is no evidence linking this girl to living in St. Louis at the time of her death. And I had to agree by this point, you would think someone would recognize her by this point. But that still remains a mystery as to what truly happened to her. So let's look what we do know now. At least at this point, a couple of girls have come forward. have been brought forward, probably being an identification for the St. Louis Jane Doe. They were reported missing around the same time that her body was found, and maybe they came from a different state. But due to more internal investigation, they were ruled out. I'm gonna imagine these girls' names because these girls still remain missing, and I believe that these girls deserve just as much recognition as the St. Louis Jane Doe. The following girls have been ruled out with the St. Louis Jane Doe, but are still missing. And we're going to show their photos here because perhaps your eyes can help bring them home or bring their family some answers. Nicole Briston went missing in 1997. Shannon Cole went missing in 1983. Johan Siri went missing in 1978. Talia Good went missing in 1978. Chandra Green went missing in 1983. Tonya Hill went missing in 1982. Shaheen Massey went missing in 1975. Sheila Quinn went missing in 1980. Sherry Tristle went missing in 1970. And Beverly Wand went missing in 1978. Among these girls was also another Jane Doe, the Northampton County Jane Doe, whose partial skeleton remains were found in rural Northampton County in 1983. Look at these girls. Do you recognize them? They're not our St. Louis Jane Doe. But are they someone you know? Or do you know what happened? If you do, look up their cases and please contact the proper authorities. These girls, like the St. Louis Jane Doe, have family still desperate for answers. Let's be the ones to bring them home, or at least tell their families what happened to their loved ones. The St. Louis Jane Doe case has not only haunted investigators, but it's also deeply affected in the community. For those living in the St. Louis, she's a constant reminder of innocence, of the innocent lives that can be snuffed out and forgotten. The media has been doing an amazing job, continuing to cover her stories in documentaries like Our Precious Hope Revisited and explored her tragic fate in depth, keeping her memory alive. This documentary was released for streaming on Amazon Prime. It's helped bring attention back to her case, hoping that someone might offer her a clue. There's also been new reports of insights of the detectives who have spent hundreds of hours trying to figure out this girl. The St. Louis Jane Doe has an entire room at the St. Louis Police Department dedicated to her case. A whole room dedicated to her, in hopes that the one piece of clue they have could be the one tell her name. Because once telling her name, they can tell her story. And telling her story means her family can know what happened. More recently, a Reddit user claimed to have information about a missing sister who might fit the Jane Doe profile. While this lead remains unconfirmed, a frenetic public interest showing that people haven't forgotten her even decades later. If her killer thinks by taking her head, her dignity, and her life we'll just scrap her away, no, we are not going to stop till we find her. If her killer is still alive today, I have a message for this person. We will find her. We'll learn her name, we'll learn her identity, and we'll come for you. We'll come for you in handcuffs or punish your name from beyond the grave. We'll do that. We will not stop until this girl is brought forward. Now, while the police have been dedicating her life, is it hospital? We now know how the police often treat girls who are missing who are African American. A lot of times their names are not featured. Many of the cases of missing women in America are white. So families have claimed the police don't take their cases seriously by not putting them in public. So it's possible that police and another department failed this girl when reporting her missing and didn't think twice to put two and two together when the St. Louis Jane Doe was found. So, while one police department has been fighting for this girl, another one may have failed her before. Another one possibly may have failed her. But we're not going to give up, and we're not going to stop. So if anyone knows of a girl who went missing, who possibly fell through the cracks, or whose family is searching for answers even without proof, tell us. Tell the St. Louis Jane Doe. The more names they have, the more they can look into this case. The more will be done to solve it. I truly do believe this girl can be identified, if not through DNA, which is on record, or her fingerprints, which is now in CODIS. It will be the public. It just takes that one name, that one person to say, I think I know who she is. I taught her. I think I was her doctor. I think I was her neighbor. I think I played with her in the park when I was 5. It takes one name, one person. In any cases, from the Yuba County 5 to the cheerleader in the trunk to the St. Louis Jane Doe, it takes one person to ensure that this to anyone to be identified, and one person knows who this girl is. They just have to be the ones to say, I think I know who this girl is. Look into this area, look into this state, and there we go. Because the chances are her being reported missing and was cared for in her life are very possible. We just need to be the ones to do it. The St. Louis Jane Doe remains buried in a headless stone that reads, Precious Hope, Little Jane Doe. But that is not her name, her true name. We still need to find out who her name is. The community may not know her real name, but her story, her life, and her tragic death still has a lasting impact on those, including myself, who continue to seek justice for her. New advancements in forensic technology and DNA, especially in genetic genealogy, offer a glimmer of hope that her identity may be one day uncovered and eventually her killer. If you know anything about the St. Louis Jane Doe or any missing person that fits her description, you're urged to contact local authorities. Sometimes it's the smallest details that can crack open a cold case. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Exploring Unsolved with Melissa. Remember, subscribe for more stories of unsolved mysteries and forgotten mysteries. And as always, stay safe, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay safe.